In the vast and varied landscape of 18th century India, a complex ecosystem of kingdoms, each with its own customs and rulers, thrived. But a new predator was beginning to assert its dominance, not through brute force alone, but through a far more subtle and insidious strategy. This was the era of the British East India Company, and a new force was about to reshape the subcontinent's destiny. The year is 1798, and a new Governor-General, Lord Wellesley, arrives with a vision that would entangle the powerful Indian states in a web from which few could escape. This intricate trap was known as the Subsidiary Alliance. On the surface, it appeared to be a simple offer of protection, a partnership for mutual security. But in reality, it was a masterfully crafted policy designed to systematically dismantle the sovereignty of the Indian rulers, drawing them ever closer into the orbit of British power. Like a parasitic vine wrapping itself around a mighty tree, the alliance would slowly but surely drain the lifeblood of these ancient kingdoms, transforming them into dependencies of a burgeoning empire. Join me as we journey back in time to witness this remarkable and pivotal moment in history. We will explore the delicate dynamics of power, the subtle art of diplomacy, and the far-reaching consequences of this political masterstroke. We will observe how Lord Wellesley, with the precision of a master weaver, spun a colonial web that would alter the course of India forever, turning proud kings into puppets and paving the way for the British Raj. It is a story of ambition, strategy, and the slow, inexorable creep of empire. Here in the heart of a vibrant Indian kingdom, we see the first and perhaps most crucial thread of the alliance being woven. The treaty dictates that the local ruler, the Maharaja, must accept a contingent of the company's troops within his territory. They are presented not as an occupying force but as guardians, a permanent shield against external threats and internal unrest. The soldiers, with their distinctive red coats and disciplined drills, become a constant presence, a visible symbol of a new and powerful relationship. Observe the dynamic. The British Army is not here at the ruler's request for a specific campaign. They are to remain indefinitely. This permanent stationing serves a dual purpose. While they offer a promise of security, their presence also acts as a formidable check on the king's own power. Any thought of defiance, of challenging British interests, must now be weighed against the reality of a highly trained professional army living right on his doorstep. The king's own forces, often a collection of irregular soldiers and local levies, are suddenly overshadowed. This strategic placement is a work of quiet genius. The British forces are like a pride of lions introduced into a new territory. They do not need to hunt constantly to assert their dominance. Their very presence alters the behavior of every other creature in the ecosystem. The Indian ruler, once the undisputed sovereign of his land, now finds he must share his domain. He's no longer the sole apex predator. The balance of power has been irrevocably and silently shifted. This protection, this ever-watchful military presence, does not come without a cost, and it is a cost designed to be crippling. The second clause of the alliance stipulates that the Indian state must pay for the upkeep of these British soldiers. This is not a nominal fee, but a substantial annual subsidy covering salaries, equipment, and all logistical needs. The financial burden placed upon the state's treasury is immense, a constant and heavy drain on its resources. For many states, these cash payments soon become unsustainable. The regular outflow of wealth begins to destabilize their economies, forcing rulers to levy higher taxes on their people, which in turn can lead to unrest, the very thing the British troops were meant to prevent. And when a state inevitably falters, when the payments become late or incomplete, the company has a ready-made solution. The ruler is compelled to cede or hand over a portion of his territory to the British in lieu of payment. This is the true masterstroke of the financial arrangement. The British are not merely collecting a fee, they are acquiring territory piece by piece without firing a single shot. The ceded lands, often the most fertile and revenue-rich parts of the kingdom, are absorbed directly into British control. The alliance, therefore, creates a self-perpetuating cycle of debt and territorial loss. The state is weakened financially, making it more dependent on the British, who in turn profit directly from that weakness by expanding their own domain. With the military and financial levers in place, a third, more personal form of control is introduced. The treaty insists that a British official, known as the resident, must be given a place in the king's court. He is not an ambassador in the traditional sense, a representative of a foreign power. His role is far more integrated and far more intrusive. He is the eyes and ears of the Governor-General, living within the very nerve center of the Indian state. The resident's influence is pervasive, often subtle yet absolute. He attends court proceedings, advises the king on matters of state, and monitors all communication and appointments. His advice is rarely, if ever, a simple suggestion. Coming from the representative of the power that guarantees the king's throne, it carries the immense weight of a command. The king finds his every decision, from appointing a minister to planning a new palace, is subject to the resident's approval. This constant supervision effectively hollows out the king's authority from within. He may retain the outward symbols of power, the throne, the titles, the opulent court, but the true decision-making power has shifted. The resident becomes a shadow ruler, influencing policy to ensure it aligns perfectly with British commercial and strategic interests. The king is slowly transformed into a performer, playing the part of a sovereign while the strings are being pulled from the resident's quarters, turning the court into a theatre of British power. The web of control now tightens further, isolating the Indian state from the wider world. A critical clause in the Subsidiary Alliance forbids the ruler from employing any other Europeans in his service without first obtaining British permission. Now, this may seem like a minor detail, just a simple administrative requirement, but its implications are, well, truly profound. It is a direct assault on the king's autonomy and his ability to seek alternative sources of expertise and power. Before the alliance, Indian rulers frequently hired European mercenaries, engineers and administrators, particularly the French, the primary rivals of the British. These individuals brought modern military techniques and administrative skills, strengthening the state and providing a counterbalance to British influence. A French general could train the Maharaja's army to a standard that might actually challenge the company's forces. A Dutch engineer could improve fortifications. This was a threat the British simply could not tolerate. By enforcing this clause, the British effectively create a monopoly on European talent and, more importantly, on military modernization. The king is now cut off from accessing the very skills that could help him resist British encroachment. His court is purged of any potential pro-French or anti-British elements, ensuring that the only foreign influence is British influence. The state is transformed into an exclusive British preserve, its windows to the rest of Europe firmly shut and bolted. The final layer of isolation is now applied, severing the state not just from Europe but from its own neighbours. The Subsidiary Alliance dictates that the ruler can no longer engage in independent diplomacy. He cannot declare war, negotiate a peace, or sign a treaty with any other Indian power without the express consent and mediation of the British Governor-General. All correspondence with other states must pass through British hands. This condition strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a sovereign state. The ability to form alliances, to manage rivalries, and to conduct foreign policy is a fundamental right of any independent ruler. By surrendering this right, the Indian king relinquishes his status as an equal player on the political stage. He can no longer build a coalition to resist a common threat or negotiate a trade agreement that benefits his people. His state is now a diplomatic island. The British position themselves as the sole arbiters of interstate relations in India. They decide who are friends and who are enemies. This allows them to play a classic game of divide and rule with, honestly, unparalleled effectiveness. They can prevent powerful states from uniting against them, mediate disputes in their own favour, and punish any ruler who dares to communicate independently. The complex, interwoven political fabric of India is unpicked and rewoven into a simple hub-and-spoke model, with the British at the centre and the Indian states as isolated, dependent spokes. In return for surrendering his army, his treasury, his autonomy and his foreign policy, what does the Indian ruler receive? The treaty offers a single, powerful promised protection. The East India Company guarantees the state's security against all threats, both external and internal. On the surface, this sounds like a fair exchange, a guarantee of peace and stability in a turbulent world. The king's throne is secure, his dynasty preserved, but We must look closer at the nature of this protection. It is the embrace of a python which secures its prey by slowly squeezing the life out of it. By guaranteeing the ruler's position against internal rebellion, the British remove the natural check on his power. A ruler who becomes a tyrant, who mismanages his state and oppresses his people, no longer needs to fear being overthrown. He is propped up by British bayonets. This often leads to administrative decay and widespread discontent, further justifying the British presence. Furthermore, this protection makes the state a pawn in Britain's larger imperial game. The state's army may be called upon to fight Britain's wars, and its resources used to support British campaigns. The king is safe, but his kingdom has become a cog in the machine of British expansion. The sovereignty he sought to protect has been hollowed out, leaving only an empty shell. The protection offered by the Subsidiary Alliance was not a shield for the Indian state, but a cage, gilded and secure, but a cage nonetheless. And so, the Subsidiary Alliance, a policy of breathtaking ambition, achieved its goal. What began as a series of seemingly reasonable treaties culminated in the complete subjugation of the great Indian princely states. Lord Wellesley's web, spun with threads of military might, financial debt and diplomatic isolation, proved inescapable. The long-term impact was the slow, methodical erosion of Indian sovereignty. Kings who once commanded vast armies and forged their own destinies were reduced to figureheads in their own courts, their power existing only at the pleasure of a British resident. This system was the bedrock upon which the British Empire in India was built. It allowed for a vast and rapid expansion of control without the constant need for costly large-scale wars. By turning the state's own resources and armies against them, the company could divide and conquer with unparalleled efficiency. The alliances created a patchwork of dependent territories that served as buffers, supply depots and recruiting grounds, facilitating the eventual conquest of the entire subcontinent. The shadow of this policy would stretch for over a century, defining the relationship between the princely states and the British Crown right up until independence. As we look back, it is a potent reminder of how power operates, not just through open conflict, but through the careful architecture of treaties and the subtle manipulation of dependence. The story of the Subsidiary Alliance encourages us to reflect on the nature of sovereignty and the hidden costs of accepting protection from a stronger power. It is a crucial chapter in the complex history of colonialism, one whose consequences shape the very foundations of modern India and whose lessons on power, diplomacy and control resonate to this day.